Welcome to the Daily MBA, where business wisdom is served fresh and fast, straight from one of the top MBA programs in the world. I'll give you summaries of my lectures and readings, as well as the most important insights gained from an MBA, so you can apply all of this knowledge in every business. Let's get started. On today's episode, I'm going to continue following our overall marketing strategy. On my last episode, I was talking to you about the 3 C's: customers, competition, and company, but today we're going to go to the fun part, which is going to be the value creation. For this, we're going to also be using another framework, which also comes from another abbreviation, and this one is called the STP, which stands for segmenting, targeting, and positioning. Segmenting is basically going to be the slicing up of the market. How are you going to slice it? Then targeting is going to be choosing either one or more of the slides, but it's going to be more specific. And then lastly, the positioning part is going to be giving your product some image for the people that are in the chosen slice. And so we're going to be looking into all of these 3 parts today in further detail in order to understand how you can better create value to customers. First part, as I was telling you, is going to be segmenting. And for segmenting, what we want to do is going to be tailor our marketing strategies for different types of groups. So what is actually segmenting? Is the process of dividing a heterogeneous market or a different market into smaller and more similar segments. And one important thing is that people within the same segment should have the same value drivers, and across different segments, they should have different types of value drivers. And why am I emphasizing this a lot? Many people think that segmenting is just going to be demographics. So I'm going to segment young people, I'm going to segment millennials, I'm going to segment like this, only with demographical features. But what really determines what makes a segment are their value drivers, because these are going to be the reasons behind them buying something or consuming something. So you have to identify which are going to be the value drivers. Another type of segmentation that maybe you should be concerned about, and it's going to be the ideal one, but it may also bring some challenges, it's going to be called the super segmentation. And this one, why am I saying it may be challenging? Basically, it's costly, because the extreme level of segmentation that you could reach as a company would be just having one individual being one segment. So you're personalizing all of your product, and this is usually going to be costly for companies. And also, sometimes people lack expertise or they are too tired to make decisions, which may lead them to the paradox of choice. People sometimes just want to buy something without thinking too much about it. So you have to identify the value drivers of your segment if they're going to be fit for the super segmentation, or if it's good just having big slices that are going to be covering up the segments. If you're wondering if companies that are using this super segmentation, I would say it's very popular in the US, because most of the things where you can make up your product are going to be including this type of super segmentation. Let's say in Starbucks, where you can actually choose which type of milk you put and which type of sugar and which type of caramel or stuff like that. That's going to be one type of super segmentation, similar to Chipotle. So people are going to be creating their own products based on their own needs and without someone telling them this is how it should be done. So this is going to be a very useful strategy, but it's very costly to make it successful. Some companies have figured out how to do it, such as Starbucks or Chipotle, but this may not be the best approach for everyone, because let's see, McDonald's, for example, doesn't let you choose so many parts of your hamburger. They just give you options, but they're preset, and you have to eat them. So it depends. You have to choose if your company may or may not allow a super segmentation. Of course, every time you do more segmentation, it will be more beneficial because you're targeting specific customer needs. But if you can't do super segmentation, just make sure, and this is going to be the important part, the different segments should have different sensitivities to the key value drivers, and people within your segment should always have the same sensitivities to the value drivers. For doing segmentation, there are two suggested methods. One is going to be called the simple way, and the other one is going to be called the rigorous way. So let's start by looking at 5 steps of each of these two methods, starting with the simple way. In the simple way, first thing is that you should define the value drivers of the customers and the descriptor variables that are going to be likely to correlate with them. Second, you should check your correlation, assuming all of the available research that you have. And here, I'm going to highlight the importance of correlation, because value drivers being correlated to the descriptor variables such as age, such as gender, such as geographic place, all of this is going to be the important part. And if you have enough information to prove this correlation, it's going to be better. Then the third step would be that you would group people based on the descriptor variables in order to form their segments. And this is why most people have the concept of segmentation as just putting millennials on one part, girls on one part, workers on one part, because you're going to be grouping by demographics, but this is only after you are sure that these demographics have a correlation with the value drivers that you're wanting to satisfy. Fourth step would be lastly identifying the competitors in each segment, and the fifth one would be getting the size and the growth rate of the market. So this method is going to be simple. It's not going to be very rigorous, but we're going to look at the second method, which is the rigorous way, and understand some of the challenges that it might bring. First step here would be getting individuals to make a rank or rate 3 types of products which vary on one attribute. And you're going to start basing your findings on these ratings with a type of equation that is going to be value equals the weight or the sensitivity related to a value driver, and multiplying that one times a specific value driver. And then this equation may become kind of long if you want to include many value drivers in the study. So it could be like weight 1 times value driver number 1 plus weight number 2 times value driver number 2 plus etc., etc. if you think your product is going to be offering different types of value drivers. If this is the case, then it's going to start becoming a little bit long, because you should do at least 50 sets of these things and then repeat for 2,000 persons or so in order to get better results and do it in a more rigorous way. After you have all of this, you would usually conduct a cluster analysis in order to get the segments, their size, and their market share. And lastly, you would establish the correlations between the weight or sensitivity to the value drivers and the segments. So this one, of course, it's very rigorous, but what is the main issue? First, it's very long. Second, it's very costly. So most of the companies can't even afford to do this method because they're going to be struggling to just get a little bit of information. And this can only be done by companies that have lots of R&D and are willing to invest very good into their product success. Of course, if you have all of this information already, you can be almost certain that the product that you'll be going to creating for this segment is going to be very aligned to their value drivers. On the other hand, the simple method is going to be very easy, very fast. You usually just need to do some data analysis, but it's going to be at least better than not doing anything. So if you should choose between those two, then maybe you should look at how many resources do you have, how much time do you have, and then decide if you would do the simple way or the rigorous way. After you have that segmentation done, you would lastly get to a segmentation table. And so remember, the sensitivities to the value drivers between the segments are going to be different, but the sensitivities should be correlated with the descriptor variables. So this would be your main criteria for doing this, and I'm going to show you, while I'm talking, an example of how this would look like in real life, but I would suggest including 5 different types of variables. One of them would be the value drivers. The other one would be the segment profile. So this is going to be all of the demographics. Then you would include the competitors. Then you would also include the market size. And lastly, you would also include the growth rate. And once you have all of this set up in a table, you can know which segment is going to be more attractive because now you have all the possible information available. And so remember, why are we gathering all of this market thing, competitors thing, and value drivers? It's all going to be related to the 3 C's that we were talking about in my last episode. So once you already have your segmentation already done, you can move to step number 2, which would be targeting. And there can be 5 different types of targeting. First type is going to be the full market coverage. And here you're going to want to have multiple products across multiple markets. Second type is going to be a single segment concentration, which would be the exact opposite. You're only going to have a single product for a single market. Then the third type would be called selective specialization. And here you're going to be offering distinct products for individual markets. So you're going to be choosing specific ones. Then the fourth type is going to be product specialization, where you have a single product for multiple markets. And lastly, the fifth one can be market specialization, where you can have multiple products, but for one single market. So you may decide among these 5 choices which one would be the best for your company, but briefly said, targeting is just going to be choosing what you want to do. Addressing the total market, full market coverage is going to be very hard, especially if you want to do it right. So what's advised is that usually you should start focusing on just one thing, and that's why it's called targeting. You're going to be setting your target, and now that you have it, you're only going to be focusing on that. So you have 5 types, but my main recommendation would be just look at the segments, look which one's more attractive, in terms of market, in terms of competitors, in terms of the customers and the value drivers that they have, and then you can choose from there. And lastly, third step would be the positioning. And here is where you want to start implementing your marketing strategy. Because in positioning, you need to emphasize the value drivers that are in the minds of the target segment that you chose. So after you already did your customer analysis, you already know all of the value drivers important to them. After you did your competitors analysis, you knew which value drivers they were satisfying and hopefully which ones you're doing better than them. And the third step that you should follow would be using the rule of 2. So only focus on 2 elements, in that way you're going to build salience and memorability. So, for example, if I am a life-best company and I want to offer many things to my customers, I should only emphasize on 2, maybe efficiency and security. And with those, you can start making your entire message of marketing. But make sure that your emphasized value drivers are believable, and also that you avoid any possible perceived contradictions, because this is going to make your message a little less stronger. One great tool for positioning is going to be a conceptual map. And this one's usually used for differentiation, and it's a 2x2 graph where you're going to be highlighting specific value drivers for your target segment. So the ones that I was talking about, you're usually going to be choosing 2. And you should always, whenever you're doing conceptual maps, try aiming to be in the top right corner, where you have positive one value driver and then positive the other value driver. And ideally, you would be doing this too better than any type of competitor. This is going to show also all of the consumers' perceptions of brands along these value drivers and helps you visualize the competitors or the market leaders. Lastly, after you did all of this, now you're ready for the last and final step of the STP, which would be doing your positioning statement. In your positioning statement, you want to say who is your target customer, what value do you offer them, and then why should they believe you? And for doing this, you're going to have 3 parts. The first part, the who, it's going to be, of course, the target market that you chose. Second part, the what, are going to be the core benefits and maybe other benefits that you might choose, but remember, this ones must be the value drivers. And then the why, this should be your competitive advantage and things that are going to support why it is going to be your competitive advantage and how it is superior to those that other customers are getting. After you finish all of this, you will have already done the value creation part by following this STP model. In my next class, we're going to go to the tactical part, in which specific things you're going to do to promote this product. I'll see you next week.